Hey guys, Jelly here. Today I'm going to show you how to install Active Directory on a server. In this case, I already have my virtual machine running. It's running in the Azure cloud and it's running server 2022 Data Center Edition. However, any other version / edition would do. Basically, these are the same steps as from 2012 and upwards. Okay, so let's jump right on into it. As soon as you boot up the VM, it should look somewhat similar to this, depending on some customization settings. And what you will first do is you will open the server manager. As soon as this server manager is opened, it will look similar to this with not much going on right there. So what you would like to do is go to manage and you say add roles and features. It will give you a small description of what it is basically and what this wizard helps you with. Here it will allow you to install remote desktop. We will get into that at a later point in time, but for now just keep it on role-based or feature-based. And then, well, this is the server currently running. As you can see, it's running 2022 data center. You could select a different server if you have multiple here, but let's just go on and proceed with this. So from here, you have a number of features which you could install. And to actually install Active Directory domain services, so basically to turn your server into a domain controller, you will just select this one, only this one. It will pop up, well, we will need to install some additional tools / features. You'll say, okay, just add them. Then when you press next, you have the opportunity to install even more, not like grouped features. So these are like separate features. You first have roles. A role might have several features included, but aside that, you also have a feature. For instance, let's go with containers. Containers, for instance, is not included in any of the roles, but there is native support for it in 2022, 2019 as well, if I remember correct. But for sure, if you like to use or play a little bit with containers, then for sure, this is the option for you. In this case, we will not select any other than what was previously selected with the server roles. So I just press next and it says, well, it stores information, and you could set up something like the Azure Active Directory Connect in case you want to enable some kind of hybrid environment. In this case, for the simplicity of this guide, I will not. And then here it will say, okay, is it okay to restart the server? Well, in this case, I'm aware that it's going to need a restart regardless. So I'm just gonna say, well, yeah, just go. Yeah, just restart automatically. And then I can press install here. Alternatively, you have the option to export the configuration settings if you want to do some, I don't know, state management, or you want to like save the initial configuration of your environment somewhere, just like disaster recovery, or just to make sure that you know exactly what is being deployed at any point in the future. Then you could do that, or you could alternatively specify a different source. In this case, we would just press install and it should run fine, but this might actually take a little bit, so I will pause the video here and I will show you guys after. As you guys can see, it actually succeeded. So after I just pressed install, just leave it and it should show up, well, config required, installation succeeded, and you press close. Then you see this flag here, it has like a notification popping up and it says something like post deployment config. So the role has been deployed, but you need to configure it. And to do that, you just click on this promote this server to a domain controller. And you could say you want to add this to an existing domain. For instance, if you already have a domain environment ready and prepared, You could add a new domain to an existing forest, and you could add a new forest. In this case, I have absolutely nothing, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a new forest. So my root domain name I will use is fabricam.com. Just pressing enter. Then it says, well, you have several functional levels, 2008, 12, 12R2, and 16. It only really matters if you have objects or you have an existing environment in which you want to use, or you have objects which were synced basically from all the domain controllers. Anything 2016 and up, you shouldn't have to worry much about it. So I would just say, okay, forest and domain, keep it at 2016, unless you have legacy or you have dated hardware. Then I wouldn't. Then I would recommend checking out which is your current domain version. But going on to a new domain or new forest, I would say try to stick it at 2016. For DNS and global catalog server, the first domain controller ever is basically a global catalog server. What it means is that it registers everything that's basically happening within the domain. Aside that, you also have a DNS server. It is optional, but it is recommended to resolve names of, for instance, computers back to IP addresses and IP addresses to names again. For the recovery or the ability to delete the role later or make changes or anything alike, you might need to set this password. It is mandatory, so I will set the password real quick. Then it will say, okay, you might be able to create a DNS delegation, but here it will also say like, well, there is no DNS server yet, so I can't. Then we hop on to the NetBIOS domain name. Basically, this is supposedly the same as your domain name, unless you have like some domain name like test local msec, which basically would simulate the name of my my machine. Then you might want to look up a different name instead of that name, but just leave it default. Whenever you think it's not necessary, just leave it default. Then we are moving on to the paths. Like for the ADDS database, it will basically use these paths for the database folder, the log folder, and the sys volume folder. I always recommend leave these the same, like just leave this as is. In some cases, I would recommend using a different location for logs, perhaps nds/logs or something, logs. But for the simplicity, I will just keep this as is. Then this will basically review what you will be doing. So it will configure a server with this domain name and this NetBIOS name with these functional and levels, global catalog, DNS, no DNS delegation because we couldn't do any of that. And then it will say, okay, the DNS service will also be configured. And then you also have the ability to view the script. So I will just press this button and it basically, this is the whole script being ran through this wizard. I will also add this specific script in my GitHub and I'll share it in the links. Okay, so here you have a prerequisite check. It will check if it meets the prerequisites. You can press the more about prerequisites if there is any error. Here it says all prerequisite checks passed successfully. Click install to begin installation. So whenever you're ready, press install and it will start installing. I'll pause the video here and I'll show you more in a second. As you guys can see, it shows me the pop-up. The pop-up basically shows that, well, it's going to restart because it installed the ADDS role. So right now I'm restarting the virtual machine, or the system is restarting it actually. And then from there, let's go ahead and go to Active Directory. Welcome back, guys. As you can see, the server has rebooted. It installed the Active Directory role. You can see it here too. Active Directory domain services. Now, when you go to Tools, you can actually verify that it's installed. You will see all these options here. And for instance, users and computers, you will still have to set it up, but Active Directory has successfully been installed. You can verify this by just opening the Active Directory users and computers blade, click on the domain, and verify that you have a domain controller. In this case, for me, it has this name. So that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot for following along, and have a good one.